Here at the SAR meeting, Elks Lodge. We got the old flag flying up off the old Suzuki. And I got my Kentucky long rifle with me. Yeah! A better shot. A small buggy. So, here we go.
Intro about what in the heck is a Floridian doing talking about North Carolina. Our family moved into Central Florida to get into citrus in the 1850s, and our daughter was the 6th generation born here. My first name actually is related here in Marion County. Captain Jonathan Clay Stewart was in Fort McCoy and fought in the Indian War. He also became the 4th sheriff of Orange County. When I moved to North Carolina for 18 years, I happened to land in the middle of the Revolutionary War capital, Hillsborough, North Carolina. There was an elderly man in the public library that said I could find your genealogy back to the Revolution, and he and I hit it off at the public library. And he said the problem in North Carolina is we have too much folklore and not enough primary records. I got pregnant going into the state archives, and for 15 years I photographed and transcribed original records out of the state archives, bound them in the volumes as you can see here, and I dealt with the infrastructure records, roads, bridges, and this gave us the ability to sanitize where were the British, where were the Patriots, how did they communicate, as well as confiscation records, which North Carolina did implement. Continental Congress recommended to help pay for the war, confiscate the Tories or Loyalists. And I have a talk on that, but anyway. So I did all those records, 218 volumes, 70,000 pages. Oh. But once I got involved, I started to get into more land records, and now I'm at 265 volumes of 92,000 pages. All of this goes into libraries and the research rooms, and every major genealogy library in the U.S. has the complete collection. My work ultimately got into the public view, which was one of the things I wanted to do, was to get the public, because nobody wants to read anything. We have state historical markers, so there, once I got these primary records out, we were able to do sanitize some of the poor signs were put up beginning in the 30s. And it really didn't take much information, so I had the first marker ever taken down. The first marker ever corrected and re-erected, and this dealt with a battle in the Revolution called Pyle's Defeat, which was in command of Light Horse Harry Lee, father of Robert E. Lee. That's who was running this one. And then 2 Revolutionary War markers. And then my last marker before we moved back to Florida dealt with the very first surveyor in the state of North Carolina to receive a historical marker. So I did a couple of books on the Revolution. I have one here if you're interested in the details, or if you can't sleep, guarantee you I'll put you out. SAR, I was a over mountain man. That's how I entered. And I was chapter president of 2 different chapters and became a state officer as historian. The Southern Campaign is a term that originates from the British. This is not a historian's tag. This is General Clinton up in New York. And Clinton believed that from reports that they were receiving, there was a lot of southern states where the loyalists were really in support. Yeah, King, we love you. So Clinton believed that if I could gather all of the southern loyalists, put down the rebel leaders, we'll come up from the south, he'll come down from the north, and we'll squash Washington and his army. So I just want to make it very clear that this was a British idea and a British term. And even though we call it the Southern Campaign, it included Delaware Continentals as well as some Marylanders. It begins in Charlestown in 1780, and of course, as we know in SAR, it finally ends at Yorktown. And it's this battle, this program's failure, that precipitated the dominoes to the end of the war. Now, You'll probably never recognize these battles because these are skirmishes. They really were not major battles, and they're basically in no history book. And so my co-author and I really dove into these skirmishes because what you're going to see in this presentation, you're going to learn, even though these were minor events. You ever heard the term nickel and diamond? Well, they add up. But it's a quiet adding up, and you're going to see at the end what it really means. So here's a modern map just to give you an idea. We're talking about coming from Charlestown and ultimately into Yorktown. And during this time, Wilmington, North Carolina's major seaport, was in control by the British. So Cornwallis will now take charge of the command within Camden, and then we're going to break up the units into two places. One's going to hit the Kings Mountain, and one will be going to Cowpens. Now, Kings Mountain is unique. Kings Mountain, in fact, I heard a presentation in the SAR chapter that says, yeah, that Kings Mountain, North Carolina, that's really something to go see. It's in South Carolina. It's not in North Carolina, okay? It's very close to the border. And just as a side note, once this battle really became famous, North Carolina created a town in honor of Kings Mountain across the line. And so Kings Mountain, North Carolina is a town that has nothing to do with the battle. And that's where the confusion comes from. Kings Mountain is not a mountain. That's the other confusion. Now, as a Floridian, when I moved to North Carolina and learned about this battle, I drove on down there, and on Interstate 85, I could see the sign, Kings Mountain, North Carolina, coming up. So I'm like, boy, I'm getting close. And off to the left is this high promontory south of Charlotte, and you see this huge mountain, so to speak, and I'm like, how did the British get up the top of that mountain? Well, it's related to the view from Kings Mountain, North Carolina, looks at Crowder Mountain and has nothing to do with the Revolution. But that actually got put as an illustration in a history book in the 1800s. They used Crowder Mountain as an illustration, had nothing to do with the battle. Because Kings Mountain is analogous to Mount Dora. Anybody climb Mount Dora? Same thing. The second part of Kings Mountain you have to realize is this is not a General George Washington battle. Had nothing to do with the military. These are over mountain men out of Virginia settling a score. They're hunters. They're not military. And on the way from Abingdon, Virginia, all the way into South Carolina, they gather up a lot of patriot militia. This is one of Cornwallis's arms. Patrick Ferguson and his men are on this mountaintops, and you'll see pictures, on this hill, and they have a lot of Tory support. When these men fought, they fought as they were raised in Virginia with the Indians. The Indians hoop and holler, come in, bang, and then they hide behind the trees. The British will write about this episode and said, these guys hid behind trees when they shot at us. How could they do that? That was, it was terrorists. They're terrorists. And they were never allowed to kill an officer. Really, that was never the mission. The mission in the battle was to outmaneuver the other side, have somebody surrender, capture POWs, and during the Revolution, we gave them back. Everybody swapped man to man, put them back into service, and go fight again. They shot and killed him dead. They saw him leaving, shot him dead. This was not a battle over negotiating. This is a battle of death. The entire force was killed, wounded, or prisoners. Took the whole wing out. Boom. Right off the bat. And George Washington, the Continental Congress, they all are like, what was this? How did this happen? I just want to make sure you're clear. This was nothing to do with the military force. The whole thing was wiped out. Cornwallis basically loses a good portion. It's not quite half, but he loses a good portion of his force. Now here is my patriot fought with Campbell. They came up this side. It's a very long, flat area on this hill. And as a ham operator, I can judge heights pretty well. It's about like 70 feet from the general terrain up. So again, they're not a mountain. But it did cause a lot of grief if you're into rifles, how difficult it is to shoot downhill, and shooting uphill definitely is a military issue. Patrick Ferguson is buried. He and one of the two women that were in his tent, an assistant, I'm sure, she was killed with him. They both were killed, buried, and there were rumors that was not true. The federal park system went in and GPR'd ground penetrating radar, and there are two bodies under these stones. So if you go visit this park, they're there, both this single man and his assistant. And there's a marker for him. Again, over mountain men are hunters, so you go take pictures of them, you don't see the normal either, a continental officer. They're all over hunters. And yet every year, these men will come from Abingdon and come all the way to Kings Mountain every single year to partake in the remembrance. Now remember that first little picture I have of the little knoll. If you were to turn completely around and then look down the top of this hill, this is where all of the army was spread out, and the federal monument is on Patrick Ferguson's camp. And he was leaving on horseback and shot dead. They know exactly where he fell. He was exiting, and the mountain men killed him dead. SAR goes there every year. It's fantastic. If you ever get a chance to go there, please do. It's a lot of fun. Now I'm going to go a little bit out of whack here in time because I want to bring in General Greene from Gates. Gates was involved in Camden. He was in the commander of the Southern Army, August of '80. So Kings Mountain is in October. So this is August. It was just a complete disaster. It was the first win for Cornwallis. It was a disaster for us. And a lot of pension records will talk about why when we got back to Hillsborough, North Carolina, we found our general there. Sorry, he left first. Washington then says, okay, you're out, and Nathaniel Greene is in. He recommends in October to the Continental Congress that his quartermaster general should become commander of the Southern Army. He really had high regard for Greene, and George and Martha Washington were advanced age of them. His wife, Katie Greene, has a huge book of letters because they were almost taken under kind of like our daughter. So when Greene dies, they're very close. It's a very close relationship with Washington. But anyway, so he had good high regards, put him in charge. And I have a presentation about Greene's moving from quartermaster general to becoming the Army general. It's very interesting. If you ever want to hear that one, I'll be glad to give it. Greene arrives in Hillsborough, North Carolina, looking for the Army because Gates said that's where I left him, and he could never find him. So again, let's just refresh that we've got this battle, this two arms, so to speak. Here's Camden, and then this whole arm's gone, and now we're going to move on to Cowpens, South Carolina. Cowpens is another national park. The land was never modified. No one ever subdivided it. The 18th century roadbed's still intact. It's just like going to Kings Mountain. No one's going to say, well, we think it's got... No, it's right here. January 81. That road that runs through the park, that original road still intact, goes to Kings Mountain. This is one place that the Over Mountain men were going. Andrew Pickens, Daniel Morgan, and William Washington were the main officers of this event. Bannister Tarleton, now the next commander that's living, almost loses his life here. After this huge loss, Cornwallis will never leave Tarleton out of reach. From now on, he wants to make sure that he will be under his command directly, even though he's in front of him. 110 dead British, 200 wounded versus 12 and 62. This was a serious win for the cause and a real black eye to Cornwallis. If you ever get to go to this national park, you'll find a tremendous array of British reenactors, and these guys take this serious. You are being back in time. Everything is precise. And this would be Tarleton in his green jacket and buff pants. So you get a nice view, and of course the kids love to learn how to make coleslaw in South Carolina. The kids think this is great.
Well, what caused the big difference in fatalities between the British and the colonials?
Well, what they had done is devised a plan to draw them into an ambush, and then once they were drawn in, all hell broke loose on them. So it was a major mistake, and we're going to come back to this drawing in idea because they're going to try it again on him. And there's a lot of books. See, I never touched this because this is well documented, just like Kings Mountain's well documented. So if you get a book on cow pens, it's an amazing story of really waiting to the last minute. You talk about, shoot when you see the white of their eyes. They really held back to the last minute, and they had them in an ambush. SR goes there every year. Now the British stay away from us, and we get to lay our wreaths. Now, the next leg of all of this starts at cow pens, and it's called the race to the dam. Now, this is a historian's term. This is not a military campaign term. Okay? Now, I'm switching gears on you. This was well documented here more recently about this campaign where Cornwallis will gather Tarleton and what's left. General Greene, as I had told you earlier, was in Hillsborough trying to figure out where the army is. He's moving southward. They find them, and he regroups everybody together, and Cornwallis is told where his army is. Let me tell you, when we call spies, spies aren't like CIA, some hidden guy in the bushes. It's local citizens. Hey, I just saw Greene in the army over there, and they'll come into the camp and tell him. So the information you find in these original letters are just amazing, how much spying or telling of what they saw. So Cornwallis grabs his army, and he starts to take off. And at this point, about halfway through, he realizes he's a self-sufficient entity, and he has 25 baggage wagons. He goes, I can't move this army and 25 wagons down these clay, desolate roads in a timely fashion to catch Greene. He makes a decision to destroy them, and he burns them all because North Carolina, well, the Patriots would have just loved to have supplies. So he destroys them all. And so this is a military guy would just love this because this would have been considered an amazing event if he would have succeeded, but it became his downfall. But anyway, so he burns his baggage, and he continues chasing Greene. Now the theory is Greene had prior knowledge of the ferry crossings across this large river. So as he was pulling the British after him, he would take a group of men on the ferry boat, cross the river, keep the boat on the other side, continue further down, take the next ferry, move them across. And then at the very last ferry crossing, he takes them across from this side over here, and Cornwallis finally catches up with him, and there are no ferry boats, of course no railroad. So this is the exact location of the ferry crossing. So he was outmaneuvered. The daily travel log of Cornwallis was found in the Scottish archives, and it showed camp location, date, and mileage. And in their forced march, those men at one day did a 25-mile forced march. Pretty serious.
Yeah.
So Cornwallis's guys are on this side. The Patriots are probably doing gestures on this side. Just joking. And he then has to retreat. So from now on, Cornwallis has one major problem: no supplies. He will always have to rely on the good old local citizens. Remember all those good old Southern, we just love the crown. Sorry. If you go there, South Boston, Virginia, right at the Dan River crossing, they put a museum up. It's just beautiful. They got wax figures, talks all about it. They have models of the boats. It's worth. If you ever get up there, it's fantastic. So Cornwallis had to make a decision. I've got to leave here and pick a location. And during that move to what's going to be Hillsborough, North Carolina, one of the first skirmishes is going to occur. Yeah. The question about Hillsborough, a lot of people are like, it's so small. Why in the world would he pick it? Well, he had 3 towns that were in existence in North Carolina at that time. And this was the home of the governor, Governor Thomas Burke. So what a great place to go put your presence. And then it was the Hillsborough District Militia Supply Depot. Nice place to come raid. And for the very first time, Cornwallis will raise the royal standard and do a public call for all loyalists to come to Hillsborough and show your support to the king. This is the very first time he does this. Now, people can't realize today, in 1781, Orange County was this is North Carolina. Orange County was massive territory, about 5,000 residents. Hillsborough had 60 homes, 100 people, and Cornwallis shows up with 2,500 men. Can you imagine bathing, toiletry, eating? It was and so for people down in Hillsborough, today it's 25 times. It'd be putting 162,000 people in about a 10-acre space. And of course, the impact, they spread them out everywhere, but I just don't think people realize how big this unit was when they came into these little tiny towns. While he's camped, he's thrown up the flag, had to feel good, arouse the loyal support, and he sends his men over to what we would call Home Depot. We'd head over to the local mill, blacksmith shop, get goods, grind grain. This is a great place to get it. And as soon as a little group of men go over there, bang, the local patriots hit them. Now, again, you see the count and the amount. Well, it's almost ridiculous. I mean, it's nothing. But what this drove was that you're not going to be in North Carolina hanging around without someone on you. And this is going to be the beginning of Cornwallis seeing this constant impact of being there. Now, Pyle's defeat is the next major event to occur. This was one of the most disputed. It was just Light Horse Harry Lee was criticized all of his life over this. It was and we'll talk just briefly about it. I have a presentation on this because it's an amazing event. In that call, in downtown Hillsborough, come ye loyalists, well, look, he got 300 people. That's not bad. I mean, it was a pretty good showing. So these 300 men communicated with Cornwallis. Cornwallis said, well, you're in Patriot territory. I'll send Tarleton to escort you through this Patriot territory so that you can safely come to Hillsborough. They agree to a location, and as soon as Tarleton leaves, Lee is sitting on the outskirts. They see this movement, they go and follow him. Tarleton comes to Michael Holt II's house, a loyalist supporter, which was not good for him. So Tarleton shows up, he goes, where's Pyle? And they go, he hadn't arrived yet. You know, you might want to check over at this other house. Maybe they misunderstood and they're over there. Tarleton leaves an officer behind, an actual British regular. Well, just moments later, here comes Light Horse Harry Lee and General Pickens, and they come in, arrest the sergeant, and find out that Tarleton's now at a different house. They leave that location, and guess who they run into? Here's Pyle's guys. Oh, God, we're running a little late. Oh, Mr. Tarleton. Now, what they didn't understand was that Light Horse Harry Lee is the only unit in the kind of under the Continental Army that had a green jacket and buff trousers and wore the bearskin helmet, but there was the striping on his jacket was different. And if you didn't know that, you would never, anyways. They thought it was Tarleton. And 93 men became dead. 33 remained. We found their name in the British hospital. They lost parts, and the rest took off into the woods. So that sent a real strong message twofold. One was, you loyalists sitting out in those woods, you could die coming in here. And then Cornwallis was like, oh my God, I just lost my group of men. That night, while all of this is going on, Cornwallis was notified by local spies again. Greene had just re-entered from Virginia into North Carolina. He immediately sends a midnight letter to Tarleton, which is preserved, and says, get back. Greene has re-entered. I'm moving on the other side of the river. So Cornwallis always wanted to be on the other side of the river to protect him. So he meets Tarleton. They start to head towards Wilmington, North Carolina. They're heading for the British port, and they camp. Guess what he does? He sends a group of men to go get supplies at the local mill. It just is coincidental the Patriots were there. They sends a group of men. They see the camp. They actually did not enter. They came back. Tarleton comes back. Now, I have a presentation on this, but because local people just love this discussion. It's a minor issue, but here is the point, right here. Look at this. 600 and 400, almost 1,000 men. And they did the same, because, Washington's in this thing. William Washington's in this event. And he goes, oh, we'll draw Tarleton like we did back at Cowpens. And so we know this because in North Carolina State Archives, we ran into this original map. So here's where they were going to put the men and draw Tarleton in here and then let him have it. They drawing of this battle, and it's absolutely fantastic. Well, while that was going on, they think the Cornwallis is heading towards Wilmington, and way up near the Virginia-North Carolina line, Greene, as he said, he re-entered and moved to a camp location, and it has been preserved for a century. It's just a beautiful camp. This is where he was actually camped in front of this house, and every homeowner that takes over always keeps this area clean. And if you move just to the right of that house, the house is back here. Here is the ford crossing. Now, people may not know a ford crossing is a way you go across a river. It's nice and look how pristine. Look at this. You could drive a truck over, a pickup truck over that. It's just a beautiful ford. That ford location predates European. That's how old these road routes are. Why was he camped back here on this location? I'll show you a map coming up. It's just this spoken wheel hub. Every road that went anywhere crossed here. So he has the army spread out all over here. Spies tell Cornwallis. Cornwallis gets a note, gets put into his entry. We're going, instead of going to Wilmington, we're going to make a U-turn and head dead north and catch Greene at the High Rock Ford. Now, when you're there today and you look over again, you can see the ford crossing, how well groomed it is. In the river, and there's that house. He was camped all on this side. The reason it's called the High Rock Ford is this 18-foot high jot. We know who put that there, and it's never moving. So, just to review where we are, now we're going to start moving a little westward. And the next event's going to be Weitzel's Mill. Now, you're like, I'm tired of hearing about these doggone mills. This is actually different. Weitzel's Mill happens to be on the road from where Cornwallis is, due north. You got to cross through Weitzel's Mill to get to the High Rock Ford. This battle was not foraging, it was a crossing point. This is privately owned. I got the owner's permission. I've taken tours here. If you read about this in a book, and then you physically stand there, you go, oh my gosh, this makes perfect sense. It is so unique that everywhere around this mill site are these rock cliffs. And they're, it's pretty dangerous to walk on them. Some of them, at least 2 stories. Others are not. And you have one crossing point on this river, and that's at the ford. So you have a mill pond that you can't, get into, and you've got these rock cliffs, and you have this one little tiny ford crossing. Absolute disaster. Here's the actual roadbed. Well preserved. Here, you see this gray spot? That's the river. So if you had a rear view mirror on your horse, that's what the British are back that away. And it is a little difficult. It's a gradual coming to the ford, and it's kind of steep coming up from it. You have to pass through this location. No other place unless you had a helicopter. Here's a modern map. Here's the public road today. Here's the 18th century roadbed. As you can see, it's a pretty even slope, and it's kind of steep. You get shot at, you get up it real quick. But anyways, that's the location of it. Now the plan was, the Patriots said, we're going to put the Continentals across the ford on those rock cliffs. We'll put the militia out front. When the British arrive, they lay down fire. We'll retreat. Don't worry, we got you covered from the rock cliffs. Sound like just a fantastic plan. So everybody had their places. It's well documented where everybody was. Now again, I hope you see that we're sloping down and going up. This is a valley, early morning battle, and things are going to go a little wrong. The British arrive, brigade guards comes up, and then, oh my goodness, the 23rd of foot and 33rd of foot come in, and you swear they had full automatic weapons. I mean, from their view, they well managed their shooting and reloading and firing. The militia panic. The black powder smoke completely covered everything. Tarleton put in his diaries, he said, I tried to have the men stop shooting because we couldn't see what we were shooting at. Mm-hmm. Militia was jammed. There are pension records that said, my dear friend drowned in the mill pond panicking. Wounded, primarily shot in the back at Weitzel's mill. Well, actually, Tarleton probably saved most of these guys' lives because he finally told the guys, stop, so we can see what we're shooting at. Don't waste the powder. The men get through. Tarleton then regains control, starts to push forward, and the men do a wonderful controlled retreat. And Tarleton then will continue to pursue them. And Lord Cornwallis sends a note up front, stop! And in Tarleton's diary, he publishes, this is the only time he said Cornwallis made a mistake. He has his letter saying, stop. I will not chase Greene again. The wisdom of the commander, remembering that race to the Dan versus the young whippersnapper ready to go kill some people. Now, so Tarleton will say this was the biggest mistake Cornwallis had. We know today what he never knew. Greene wasn't at the High Rock Ford. So he would have been chasing him again, so the wisdom of Cornwallis won. So the British start taking a road. Here's the High Rock Ford. You see these roads? They come in from everywhere. A lot of them not even documented. So Greene actually was at Boyd's Ford, at Boyd's mill, not Weitzel's mill. Of course, this is where the battle was. He was over here. He just happened to take the army to go get some grain. And so when he heard the fighting, he moved his men, once again, across a river to put a river between the two of them, and then migrates back to the High Rock Ford, which a tremendous amount of Virginia and North Carolina militia are on their way. This is where he gets his biggest group of men finally. And then the British Army comes forward, and we have that infamous battle of Guilford Courthouse. March coming up, 1781. Cornwallis finally gets to get it on with Greene. And of course, Greene loses. The best book on this battle, again, we don't touch it, this is a recently published book done by Dr. Babbitts out of ECU and Josh Howard, the head archivist, historian at the archives, and they've corrected a lot of mistakes at this battle. Cornwallis wins. 40% loss of men. Man, that's a good victory. 40% dead. Green, of course, leaves. Now, what the numbers didn't show, which historians found out later, 60% of Green's force left him, and they were the militia. The militia abandoned him on the field. So when you look at the numbers, never rely on what you see, because you'll say, why were there so few Patriots dead in this battle when Cornwallis loses so many? It's because they were out of there. It was and I think it comes from the sourness that was well publicized at Weitzel's Mill. The militia commanders said, don't you ever use us as sacrificial lambs. How dare you put us in front of that doggone fort? How dare you? So there was a lot of disagreement at that Weitzel's Mill mess. You go to, it's a national park. The SAR has an event there, nice wreath laying, and because you can't shoot a gun in a national park, you go outside the park and they do a reenactment, and it's first class. I mean, it's a blast. Everybody loves it. The cannons roar. In this one, you get people actually, they will do battle, and they'll put dead people laying, fake dead people lying on the ground. It's just a lot of fun. Again, you get to see a lot of British, you get to see a lot of flags. These are the Scots Guards, not to be confused with Scotch Guard. There they are. You get to see some of those Scots. And now we're pretty much at the end of the Southern campaign. We're almost at the very end. And I'd just like to see, this is what Cornwallis has done. He came by ship. He's gone all the way. And now he retreats to Wilmington, British port. And they finally get rest. And now we get to talk about how successful was the campaign. And I prefer not to give you my opinion. I prefer to listen to the guys that were involved. And these are primary letters written by Cornwallis. Our experience has shown, he's talking about loyalists, our experience has shown that their numbers, loyalist numbers, are not so great has been represented. And here's the key word, and their friendship was only passive. We love the king. Yeah, you want to join? HBO on it too. I'm busy, sorry. And this is what he really ran into. I don't care how many the numbers were. Were they willing to come and fight? Not really. Now, that's his report back to headquarters, but he has a better letter to one of his federal generals. And just coincidental, I was looking through. I had nothing to do, I should have been doing, and I was reading letters. And he writes this one to Major General Phillips. This is great. The idea of our friends, again talking about the loyalists, rising in any number totally failed, as I expected. Now, who's been on a military campaign that realizes if you're not with the idea, it might not have gone so well. As I had expected, what is our plan? You wouldn't want Clinton to have read this letter, but what is our plan? Without one, we cannot succeed. And I assure you, now here's the key, I assure you, I am quite tired of marching about the country in quest of adventures. Now, where is this being written? Wilmington. What's next? The end. Yorktown. What happens when they surrender at Yorktown? Where's Cornwallis? Well, the official record is he was ill. He was sick. He was ill. Really? I think we read how ill he was. He had ill feelings over this whole event. They didn't want to give that sword up. No. Hell no.
It's second command there.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and there's a lot of paintings that are wrong because it also shows the sword going to George Washington, which he did not accept because it was lower. Yeah.
Lincoln.
Yes, it should have been Lincoln, yeah. Right. So, you know when he was at his tent, because you go to Yorktown, they'll say, oh, here's the battle. Oh, here's where Cornwallis' tent is. Well, I had to make sure the Hummer had enough gas to get over to it. I mean, he was a long ways away. When that thing's battling, he's got to remember this. And at Wilmington, I forgot to mention, he writes one letter one of his favorite officers died. He was wounded here. He died on the way to Wilmington. He writes a letter to that man's father apologizing for his death. Said he's lost one of his favorite commanders, Ferguson. He's lost one of his other favorite officers. It's further down, but I think there must have been some more relationships behind that. And he's sitting here smoldering, and I know when he's at that tent listening to the pounding of those cannons, it all had to come to an answer. I've had enough. Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions?
I had my great-great-grandfather, James Pemberton, came from Wilmington area. He had a ferry across Cape Fear. He came down to Florida in the 1820s, somewhere along through there, and put a ferry down across the Weitzel River, about where the veteran cemetery is now, right near the Ocala, Florida Prairie. And but he came from that area. Just before all this happened.
Yeah, it's a rough time because all the citizens of Wilmington were either POWs or you left. The signer of the Declaration, we had 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence. Brothers, one signed, he left and went to Hillsborough and lived there the rest of his life. His brother stayed behind in Wilmington. He continued to operate a store. And the Patriots hated his guts. They wanted to confiscate him so bad they just had, anyway. So Wilmington, those who stayed behind were always in question. It was a difficult time. Any other questions? Well, great. Well, thank you all very much.
Yes, I just one thing. The militia, were they inept or were they just positioned in a battle as cannon fodder? What?
It's a combination of two because you have to understand militia would be, if you were never military oriented, it would just be us local people.
Right.
They were never really trained. I think people would argue in Weitzel's mill incident, they were not the people you should have put out front. And who knows? Who knows? You would have had to have been there. I never saw any counter arguments in all of the documents I've read over the years. I never saw anybody ever argue on the other side to say, oh, well, the reason we did that was blah, blah, blah. I never saw any other argument. But generally speaking, we have a lot of accounts back at Clapp's Mill where the men panicked because when the 23rd and 33rd foot comes in, half fire, half a reloading, and it's just bang, 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 bang. The men that reported said the twigs that were hitting them from the face, they had to close their eyes, of the bullets whistling through the woods. Because it's February. I mean, it's heavy brush.
Yeah.
But it was just twigs were hitting them in the face. If you just go out and kill a deer for dinner, that's got to be a different thing to ever be shot at. I've never been shot at, so I could never critique it. But I think that's what it is.
It is no fun.
But thank God they did it.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, thank you very much for your great talk.